In January 2000, AOL merged with Time Warner in a deal worth $164 billion. It was the largest merger in the history of American business. 2 years later, the combined company reported a loss of $99 billion. That was also the largest in American business history. By 2015, Verizon bought what remained of AOL for $4.4 billion, a company that had briefly been worth more than General Motors, Ford, and Boeing combined. Here is what makes this story different from most corporate collapses. The man who engineered the merger knew it was desperate. Steve Case, AOL's founder, could see broadband coming. He knew it would make AOL's entire business model obsolete. He knew AOL's stock was massively overvalued, so he used that overvalued stock to buy Time Warner's real assets before the bubble burst. The plan made sense. The execution destroyed two companies at once. This is the story of how the Internet's first empire collapsed, not because it failed to see the future, but because it saw the future too clearly, panicked, and made the worst deal in the history of American business. If you were online in the 1990s, you probably got to the Internet through AOL. The disks came in the mail, millions of them, then hundreds of millions, eventually more than 1 billion. AOL CDs in cereal boxes, in magazines, taped to the front of newspapers. The pitch was simple: install this and you can get online. The sound became iconic, the screeching, crackling handshake of a dial-up modem connecting. Then the voice, "You've got mail." AOL built a walled garden. Their version of the Internet had chat rooms, news, email, instant messaging, shopping, everything inside the AOL ecosystem. The strategy was deliberate. Don't send people to the open Internet, keep them on AOL. That way, every minute a user spent online was a minute AOL could monetize. By 1997, AOL had 20 million subscribers. By 1999, 26 million, each paying around $22 a month for access. At its peak, AOL accounted for nearly half of all Internet traffic in the United States. Steve Case, the co-founder who built this empire, had a gift for understanding what ordinary people wanted from technology. Not power, not features, but simplicity. AOL made the Internet feel safe and manageable. That was the genius of it. It was also the ceiling, because the Internet wasn't going to stay simple, and AOL's model only worked in the world where people had to pay to access it. Broadband was coming. Cable Internet and DSL were rolling out across America in the late 1990s. Faster connections, always on, no dial-up handshake, no disconnecting when someone picked up the phone. And critically, no monthly subscription fee to AOL. With broadband, you didn't need AOL to access the Internet. You just opened a browser. Steve Case saw this clearly. AOL's subscriber-based model depended entirely on being the gateway. Once people could get to the Internet without AOL, $22 a month became $22 for nothing. He also understood something else. AOL's stock was at an all-time high, riding the dot-com bubble, valued at levels that had nothing to do with its actual earnings. That stock was a currency, and it was about to depreciate dramatically. The question was what to do with it before it did. Case's answer was audacious. Use the inflated stock to buy something real. Something with physical infrastructure, content libraries, cable lines, magazines, assets that would hold value after the bubble burst. Time Warner had all of those things. The plan was to trade imaginary Internet money for real-world assets before the market corrected. It almost worked. On January 10, 2000, Steve Case and Gerald Levin stood together and announced the merger. AOL would acquire Time Warner in a deal valued at $164 billion, the largest merger in corporate history. AOL shareholders would own 55% of the new company. Time Warner shareholders, despite owning cable networks, movie studios, magazines, and HBO, would own 45%. Levin's own advisors told him not to do it. His board was skeptical. He pushed it through anyway. 9 months later, the dot-com bubble burst. AOL's stock, which had been the currency of the deal, lost more than half its value. Suddenly, Time Warner shareholders had traded their real assets for massively devalued internet stock. The merger that had seemed like a triumph now looked like a theft in reverse. AOL had gotten far more than it was worth. The cultural collision was immediate and brutal. Time Warner executives, magazine editors, film producers, cable operators viewed the AOL team as overpaid internet cowboys with no real assets and no discipline. AOL executives viewed Time Warner as a slow, bureaucratic old media company that didn't understand the future. They were both right about each other. The merged company couldn't agree on strategy, couldn't integrate its systems, and couldn't stop fighting long enough to face the actual threat. In 2002, AOL Time Warner reported a net loss of $98.7 billion, the largest annual loss in American corporate history. $45 billion of that was written off in a single quarter. The rest came from goodwill impairments, accounting acknowledgement that the merged company was worth far less than anyone had paid for it. Levin resigned. Case was forced out by his own board. Federal investigations began into whether AOL had inflated its advertising revenue during the merger negotiations. AOL's subscriber numbers began to fall. Broadband was accelerating exactly as Case had predicted, but the merger hadn't provided the protection he'd hoped for. Time Warner's cable systems charged customers for broadband access, but those customers weren't using AOL. They were going straight to the open internet. The walled garden was empty. By 2003, the company quietly dropped AOL from its corporate name. It became just Time Warner again, as if the merger had been something to forget rather than celebrate. In 2009, Time Warner spun off AOL as an independent company. The thing that had been valued at over $100 billion 9 years earlier was now worth around $3 billion. The two companies that had merged to conquer the future ended up smaller than either had been before they started. AOL's collapse is usually told as a story of arrogance. A dot-com company drunk on its own valuation, overpaying for an old media giant it didn't understand. That's not wrong, but it misses something. Steve Case wasn't delusional. He was right about broadband. He was right that AOL's model was going to fail. He was right that AOL's stock was overvalued and that the window to use it was closing. The tragedy of AOL isn't that it failed to see the future. It's that it saw the future correctly, made a rational decision in response, and still ended up destroyed. The merger failed because two incompatible cultures couldn't be forced together. Because the dot-com collapse hit harder than anyone expected. Because Time Warner's cable systems wouldn't bundle AOL. Because the internet turned out to be a place where you didn't need a guided tour. In 2015, Verizon bought AOL for $4.4 billion. In 2021, Verizon sold AOL and Yahoo together to a private equity firm for $5 billion combined. Two empires of the early internet, sold as a bundle for less than what AOL alone had briefly been worth. Somewhere, 1 billion AOL disks are still sitting in landfills, and nobody is calling them valuable.